Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I am the Smoker Broker. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy Thursday. Moving through to the weekend. Summer's here. Good times, bad times, COVID, protest, everything. Everything's out there. It's the life we live. Reason why we call it life. Lots of different things out there. We talk about real estate on this particular show. And today we're going to go through and do a little bit different. We're always talking about actual concepts and theory, training, and that type of stuff, because a lot of the people who watch the show really are geared in towards that information. But we're going to talk about a topic today that's really probably the most important, and it's the safety of the real estate agent. Far too many times we have some naivety out there as to what it is that we're doing, that everything's fine, there's not a problem. And for the most part, that's true. A lot of times that's okay, but every once in a while, and they're few and far between, but once is bad enough, there can be issues. And this show will be geared towards giving you the tips to kind of keep you away from those possibilities of happening. So my prior career, 20 years before this, I had the loss prevention crews that worked with me at Foot Locker, Foot Action USA, and Just for Feet. And one thing that we taught the guys was that every barrier out there, one additional barrier out there of protection, is that much more of a deterrent for somebody to do something. All right, we're going to talk about those barriers. You might not think that it's a big deal with certain little subtle things that you do, but it does matter. For instance, if you want to look at the retail world, something that you can relate to as far as when you're out and about, well, at least when you used to be out and about, when you go through and you go into a retail store and you notice that they have a dome camera. All right, that's what we would call one barrier. That's one barrier out. That's one for someone saying, I need to be careful with that. Sometimes that's not enough. So one of the second barriers would be the seismic tags on the side when you pass and it beeps. That's a second barrier. A security guard that's inside the store. That would be a third. Every time there's another layer, it's another deterrent that somebody would possibly do something. So it does matter. If you follow the procedures, you really are improving the chances that something will not happen to you if you're following these rules. A lot of the major issues when it comes to safety is a realtor that let themselves get in a situation that they should not have been in the first place. So we're going to talk about those things today. As always, I'm joined with my crew. I like to bring them on. They do a better job than I do of explaining these things. I have three of my best and favorite agents on today. They're always so outgoing and so informative with all the stuff, and they make the show so much worthwhile. It's great to have, the person that runs the group, the people that do the group. They're the ones that really do the work and implement the things that we have in place. And honestly, we just can't do the show without them. So today I got Miss Richa on my side over here. Richa, how are you? Good to see you.
Doing well. How are you guys?
Good. How's everything going?
Everything's good.
Yeah,
Got
you
the
got
little
good.
ones.
Yeah, I saw you had a
Yeah,
really nice close this weekend. That was
I did.
this week, I guess. Good to see you on the boards there, doing what you always do. Your occasional bam, something with a big sale. Rich is a great
Yeah.
realtor for everybody's out there, but she has a lot of stuff that she does, but she's really good at real estate, and I wish she just did it so much more. But for those that are lucky enough to have her, she's a really strong real estate agent. And when I say bam, she usually does just the big deal. She'll just go in and just, here's a $700,000, $1 million one. So she's quite the agent when she gets out and about. So congratulations on that. Always nice to have a decent close like that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, like we've talked about before, it's always about building those relationships and being there for your friends when they need you. That's it.
Well, and I
So,
think your I think they already know that, but they're super fortunate to have you. I think a lot of people, and it's by your choice, don't realize how long you've been doing it and how strong you are at it. And
thank you.
which that's fine. That's the way you like. Yeah, you run your personal life more than anything. But it's a shame that they don't realize how strong you are at it. Those people are very fortunate to have your expertise and, quite honestly, some very expensive homes. Not homes that are just anybody could do. So there is a higher level of knowledge that sometimes is needed for luxury homes. So,
Yeah.
while I'm thinking about it too, this doesn't apply to everybody else out there, but since I average on there, you really need to start thinking about getting into those luxury programs and divisions at Keller. And I think you might find you might even find some lead generation in there with the business that you've done. So you make sure you note to ask me about that.
Will do.
Your resume has quite a few of those on there, and you really probably should be doing that. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's all from your guidance and help and unnecessary text that I send you at 10 p.m.
No, it's all you guys want to think. Manu, how are you? It's good to see you.
Very good. Good to see you all as well. It's wonderful to be on the show.
Yeah, I love having you out there. As always, I love to see Banu get mad just once. Just one time. Irritated.
Never going to happen.
I mean, Banu, we've got to be on what, 5 or so. We're getting close. If not, we're right around 5 years or so. But I never. She always has this ridiculous smile on her face. I don't know how she does it. I just cannot do my face like that. It's amazing. I would love to see her one time. Just God. Yeah, but I just don't think that'll ever happen. So
no.
I don't think
I haven't seen it.
Right? I don't think you realize how contagious that
positivity.
My guess is that everybody who knows you knows that about you, and I don't think you realize how powerful that is when you're out and about. I think people are somewhat comforted by that when they're dealing with the real estate agent. So just as Rich, all of you guys have different qualities and different ways of doing things, but there's no doubt that is something that makes you shine out there. Your clients are very fortunate to have you as well. So glad to have you. And then my buddy down there, David Tanner, he's out of the Coppell area, and he too, I always claimed him. He's one of the hardest working guys out there. He, in a way, is kind of like Manu, and he has a very positive attitude. Although I know David a little more personally. David, I know, can have the God. I know he can do it. But he doesn't show it as much, but I know he's capable of it. So,
I have my moments.
I know. Believe me, I know. So, but it's good that the outgoing side of it is good. All of these guys right here serve the North Texas area. Most of them will pretty much go anywhere. Richard might sometimes hesitate, but they're pretty much all over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and very valuable to the Keller Williams organization, especially the SWR group. The show is geared towards all brokerages out there, but especially we favor our Keller Williams family because we have a lot of the team members that watch the show via archive. It's not uncommon for the show to have anywhere from 400 to 500 views a week on archive. I do like the fact that the audiences tend to be getting bigger. I noticed last week was the first time I didn't post the show right after we were done, because normally I do it that day of, and I just forgot. It was the first time in 2 years that I literally forgot. And when I posted it on Saturday, so it only had like 99 views because I hadn't posted it. And when I posted on Saturday, it went from like 99 to almost 400 within 24 hours. So that's very comforting to me that there are quite a few people out there that watch on archive. So very appreciative of that. Glad the show gives you value. We try to make it to where there's takeaways from it. And today will be no different as we talk about probably the most precious topic in real estate, and it's our well-being and our safety when we're out and about. It's one of my most concern, and it's very unfortunate that I don't address it as much as I should because, and don't get me wrong, inside the Keller organization, they have tons of, our crew is very well aware of safety issues. I just get annoyed that I don't talk about it as much because I'm so piled up with technicalities, legal, and all that type of stuff that I don't address it as much. So I like this particular show because I think it's just as important and we don't get it out there as much. So let's talk. There are so many topics. That's funny. Richard was talking to me about before we got on. Well, what's the topic going to be today? There's so many. There doesn't have to be a topic. There's components that we go through, and this show probably is like a 5-hour show normally. So we're just going to go through pockets of some of the main problems out there and give some takeaways to the crews out there so they're a little more careful. You know, one of the changes to the show, we've done the show probably 3 times over the last 2 years. One of the significant changes to it is, now COVID has to be in place with safety. We've talked so much about COVID the last 3 months, and that's fine. Need to. And even right before the show came on, we were starting to talk. So I'm going to start off with that. We're not going to get deep into COVID because we've been discussing it so much. But from a safety perspective, since the show is about safety, I want to make some brief comments about it. Very interesting what we're seeing out there. We were talking. I love how you guys were talking before the show started about what you're seeing with COVID, and I was going to say a daily changing thing. I think it's more like an hourly changing thing now. We go from being horrifically scared to, this sucks, to, it's all right. I guess we can do this or that, to, hey, it's all right. Nobody else is doing anything. We'll go ahead and just get on out there, to, whoa, it's still out there and it's getting worse. I don't know what to do. I've gone like this, over the last few weeks. So the guys, for everybody else that's listening, the guys were talking about when, before the show, what they've seen recently when they go to the doctor, the people that they're seeing, how they're reacting. And we've talked about this on several shows recently, but, it's really a 50-50 mix out there. You have half the general public that's very concerned and they are all decked out. Mask, gloves, everything. And then you have the other half that are like, I don't care. It does not matter. I'm not doing a damn thing about it. And that's just the way it's going to be. The beaches are packed right now, which I certainly question that. I mean, I'm not saying whether you should have masks on or not. What I am saying is those beaches being packed with strangers that close to each other traveling. I don't know if that is the greatest idea. But from a safety perspective, inside the real estate world, we still have to be concerned that it can pass with our clients. I'll give you a good example too. This one hits home to me. So I have not met anybody as of the weeks before until this past week. I had not met anybody that had it. And I talked to a lot of people and I see a lot of people, and I had not met one person who had it until Wednesday. So this was through via a friend of a friend. I thought it was awkward that he shakes my hand and then tells me that he had it. And by the way, on the shaking hands thing, I asked somebody whether they want to. I don't just assume. I'm now like, are you a hugger or a shaker or a no? So, and he goes, I'm a shaker. I'm like, well, great. So I saw him. It doesn't bother me. I wash my hands, so it's all good. So right after that, like 20 minutes later, we're talking amongst each other. And they're like, well, you look like you're just doing great. I go, oh, well, we're having surgery or something. No, I had COVID. I'm like, you could have at least told me that when we were prior to the handshake, And for the record, I still would have shaken the guy's hand because I know damn good and well those people that have had it, that have had to go through county resources, believe me, they have been schooled on when they are allowed to get out and when they are not allowed to get out. They are federally tracked right now. So believe me, it wasn't that concerning to do it. But here's the thing. Guy is my age. He's just under 50. He's healthy. Nothing wrong with him at all. And it just hit him like a ton of bricks. Spiked a fever one evening. Fine the whole day. Spiked a fever at 104. Went in. They go, you've got it. Put him at home, with the stuff he needed. He goes through the first night where he's delusional, just like you've heard on TV, which you can't believe TV, which is why I thought this conversation was interesting. It was delusional the first day. Second day, he started losing his breath, which he said was the scariest thing in his life. He said he was this close. He actually had decided he was going to pass, which is very scary for someone who's healthy. I've heard these stories. I've been suspectable. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. But it hit home. I go, this is true. This guy, I know him. This is a legitimate. So he goes back into the ER. But here's the thing. This is the message I wanted to pass on with this. He is one of the later ones that got it versus the ones that got it in the beginning that caused this whole pandemic and was really scary. Well, still is scary. But the procedures are now in place that they were able, I'm not going to say they treated him, but it was enough to get him through. The drug, what was it? The Revisum, I can't even say it.
Remdesivir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They put him on that, and 24 hours later, his breathing problems went away. His fever held on for another 3 or 4 days. They gave him some, I want to say plasma from somebody else who had it before. And 10 days later, he's back to normal. So it's scary that I met someone that had it. It's scarier that he was a legitimate, just like me, could get it. And it did reinforce to me that it is still out there. It can still happen. And as we're talking about realtor safety today, I'm going to renew our conversation about it's everybody's choice on what they do. We cannot force somebody to do something. However, from a safety perspective, it is our responsibility to tell our clients that they really should have a mask on, probably should have gloves, even though the CDC boxed the gloves. I'm like, the gloves are still gloves. It's better than hands touching. They say the gloves. I'm like, I don't know about that, but mask at a minimum, because it's the droplets that are a real problem. And it's probably a good idea to have disinfectant with you as you walk through and you spray the doorknobs and stuff. I'm not telling you to do it. I'll pop brokers that call me. Why'd you tell them that? I'm like, I didn't tell them that. I said, from a safety perspective, it's probably the right thing to do because it is still out there and we can still get it. Now, I think the change in that is, and one of you, I was saying it before the show, and I appreciated it. You can get it right now, but I think the presence amongst most people is they are acceptant that if they get it, they'll probably make it through, and they're not going to be thrilled about it. And of course, if you're in the categories of, the elderly, that's going to be a little tougher. But I think they basically got to where if it happens, it happens. That still doesn't make it any easier, though. That story I just told was true. It's a true story, and that didn't sound very fun to me. And I know what it's like to have shortness of breath like that. That's not good. Go for a 24-hour period where you're breathing like that. That's got to be hard on somebody. My guess, too, is that is what triggers a lot of them from passing is the panic that sets in from not being able to breathe like that. That can't be good either. So we still have a responsibility as agents when we're out and about to be telling them, hey, look, you really should. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not telling you to force them to do it. I'm telling you probably ought to have a good sense. And if you're not going to do that, you better damn well at least be doing a strong social distancing between you and that individual. If you're not going to have a mask on, but you're going to stay 6 feet away from someone the entire time, and you're going to make sure you disinfect any door stuff you hit, that probably would work. I mean, the CDC has come back and said that still the best medicine for this is a 6 foot distancing mark, because even the droplets, they say, can't go that far. So doesn't matter what poison you choose. That's probably a bad word to say. Doesn't matter what you use. But you use something. We're talking about safety. We're trying not to be naive. You got to have something out there. All right, comments from y'all before we move on to that. What are y'all's thoughts there?
I think you hit it on the head. I think a simple thing like a mask, I don't think should be inconvenient for anybody. It's simple. It's a simple ask.
Right.
Keep your distance, hand sanitize. If you don't have, Lysol wipes and spray and all that. So if you open the doors and stuff, just make sure you wash your hands with soap and water before you exit the home. Or if you don't have soap and water, just hand sanitize. And I think these are like some general common sense safety measures that people should be taking. I think you hit the nail on the head. It can be scary. I think, and like you said, COVID in terms of, being able to contract it, all kinds of conflicting news, but just use common sense that, okay, say the news is completely wrong and it's not nearly as scary as it's portraying. So what? Just better to be safe than sorry.
The fact remains that there are people that are getting it. There are people that we have people that we know are people in conjunction that have got it. We know it's a real thing. It's not, that part's not fake. How much is it? How bad is it? I mean, it's hard to tell by the news, spiked or not spiked, but it's out there.
Yeah. And I think that's 7 degrees. The 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. I feel like that, you used to play. I think it's, if the news is correct and the numbers are going up, that is going to get closer and closer to home.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, what I've seen is there's such a chasm between like you talked about earlier, some people who are just very flippant about it, and then others who are very cautious. Because I was showing houses a couple of weekends ago to an out-of-state client. We were doing FaceTime. So I was walking him through the house, right? So one of them was an open house. So so I showed up and was talking to the listing agent. She wasn't wearing a mask. She didn't care at all. Pretty much everybody else in there was wearing a mask, and we took our shoes off. And so she was really nice lady, but she didn't care. She's like, oh, I'm not concerned about that at all. And I'm like,
See,
okay, well, I'm going to wear it.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't mind her not having the mask on as long as she
Right.
stays away from everybody else.
Yes.
A good 6 feet away always, and disinfects anything that she touches. I don't have a problem with that. Now, if she
I don't care. And then on the flip, yeah. And then on the flip side of that, so the next weekend I showed some more houses to this same client. Well, we ended up going under contract with one of them, and I met the inspector at the house week before last, and this guy, he's somebody we all know and love, right? And he kept his distance. He said, "Look, this is my livelihood. I cannot risk, being taken this lightly." And he literally wiped down everything he touched in that house before he left.
Yeah, and it's a tough road to follow. And this give me the last comment on this, because I don't want to take COVID the entire time, but it's tough because you watch someone do that, and you're like, well, that's responsible.
Yeah. That's it. Responsible. That's the word right there.
Responsible.
But on the same hand, you have people on the plane right now. The air circulates. You can have a mask on all you want. If something gets in that vent, it goes through. In a plane, the vent just does, the air does this. So you have all these people. My brother's on a plane this morning. He said it was full.
I think people have to continue with their life to a certain extent, right? Like if it is necessary and it's something you have to do, take all the precautions you can possibly take, and then
that's all you can do.
That's all you can do is take precaution. That's it.
I caught it.
And that's exactly what I told both my sellers and my buyers, that you have to take the precautions that you feel good about, and I'm going to do what I feel comfortable with.
I like that attitude. It seems like all of you are on the same opinion. We haven't even discussed it that way. That's the opinion I'm at. I know what needs to be done. I'll do what I need to do. You do what you need to do. I know at a minimum I want social distancing. After that, everything's extra on top of it. Okay.
Yep.
Good conversation about that. Let's start talking about probably the main takeaway from the show, and it's going to be when you're out showing some of the safety takeaways that you have. Before that, because I always forget, I want to make sure I thank our sponsor. We're very fortunate to have BPG Inspections, Martin Cooley, sponsoring our show. We have a lot of choices as to who we can use as an inspector. We give multiple choices to our clients because we don't want to say just use this one, but we'd be lying if we didn't say we favor Martin a bit more than a lot of them out there, because he does such a very good job with our clients. His bedside manner is so fantastic. He tells it like it is, but he doesn't scare them, but he still does the reporting via the Texas Real Estate Commission. He has been doing it for a long time now. I want to say, I remember he's a veteran of the United States Navy. He's certified in all. He's certified in COVID-19, ASHI, mold inspection, HVAC, pool, spa, all the home general inspections. Just a really overall good guy to have. We have a lot of brokers and a lot of agents that watch us. Martin's stuff, I don't know if Mark can get it on there, but he'll flash it down here in a minute. And if he doesn't, Martin's number is 817-401-3240. Again, that's 817-401-3240. Martin Cooley with BPG Inspections. Okay, so when you're going to go show a client and it's somebody you don't know, we'll call them a stranger, even that's a weird way of saying, but that's what it is. Because sometimes this does happen. These situations revolve in a couple of ways. One, you get a call off your sign and they want to see the house and you go out and show. That's one stranger situation that we deal with. The other one is where a friend of a friend referred you to somebody and you don't know that individual. Still a stranger. A little bit less of a not a complete stranger, but still a stranger in general. Okay, a couple of things that we look at when we're dealing with somebody we don't know, or someone right off of the internet, or that just calls the office and wants to go looking at properties. Those are the alternatives. Okay, so the calling off the signs. there's not a real estate agent out there that won't tell you that they're not so thrilled when they get the call off the sign and someone wants them to go show them the house. Now, it's tough because our clients want us to do that. That's what we're there for. That's what we're paid to do, is to show the house. But it's very awkward when somebody calls off the house, because there's a lot of real estate agents out there. And a majority of the people in this country know somebody who's a real estate agent. It's just a little strange sometimes when they call and say they want to go look at this and they have those friends out there. You're like, well, why didn't you go through them? Why didn't you ask them to show you this house? Now, there are some legitimate answers for that. Sometimes they didn't want to bother them. You didn't want to bother them. You want
to bother me, right?
Well, yeah, so that's fine. And it's not a bother if they're going to buy it, but it is a bother if they're just looking at it, right? So you have that, but it's a stranger at a minimum. So here's some takeaways from when we deal with this situation. This is important because there are some people that do some weird things with this. So I've seen before where some agents will require you to give ID before they go show. Now, that's a very concerning line to walk, depending on how you utilize and execute that order. Now, the National Association of Realtors post, in their safety miles that they go through, and they say that asking for an ID can be somewhat okay sometimes. I'm like, if you're not doing it consistently with every single person that you meet, very possibly violating federal law by being discriminatory, even if you don't mean to be, why'd you make that person give an ID, but you didn't make that person do it? Not a fan of asking for someone's ID. There are a lot of other precautions that we're going to talk about that you can do that would not be revolved around asking someone for an ID. An ID has a lot of personal information on it. It has their driver's license number on it. It has their birth date. I can tell you, I'm not that comfortable giving my license to somebody. In fact, I don't even like it when somebody asks for it. I'm like, why the hell do you need that in this day and age? God forbid the Social Security too. That's my favorite, when some random schmo asks me for my Social Security number. I'm like, who the hell are you? So the other precautions that we have, and this is the one here's the ones that I favor. My opinion, it's my show, my opinion, but I've done it for 20 years, and I still think this is the best procedure to use when you're utilizing this. And this is what I think one of the best takeaways from this particular show should be. So if you're going to meet someone who is a stranger, it is a very good idea to meet them either one at the actual office, or if you don't have an office, at a public place. There's been numerous amounts of research that say that literally decreases your chances to almost 2% of something bad happening to you when you did that one step. So that one step can give you a 98%, hey, I'm probably going to be okay if I did that. That's huge. So at a minimum, you should be meeting someone at the office, preferably, or at a public place. It's been proven that most people who have intentions of doing harmful things are much less apt to do that if somebody else saw them with you. Okay. So that's tip one. Now, anybody out there that's listening might be like, oh, that's so stupid. Of course I know that. That's not true. There are a lot of new agents that when they get that call, they go just show that house because they were told to do that. A lot of times, one of the downfalls of a lot of the training systems in place is that they don't spend a lot of time addressing the safety issue. You sign a document that says, here, this is what I'm supposed to do. And that's pretty much it. So when you get out there, you forget about that and you just randomly, nothing's going to happen to you because it's naivety. Naivety is a terrible thing when it comes to safety. And I've talked about this on several shows, and I've talked about it in half my real estate career and my professional career prior to this. I'm going to tell you right now, those of you who utilize the idea that if I'm in a particular area, I'm safer than somewhere else, that is a really foolish and incompetent statement to make. There is no truth to a particular area that you're in that you're better off than another. Anything can happen anywhere. Some of the nicest places in the world that I've ever been, I've seen the most horrible things that have ever happened. In fact, I've said it on many shows too. One of my biggest pet peeves with any of my agents or anybody I've ever trained, cannot stand it when someone says, "Well, that's a bad area." I'm like, "What the?" I go, "What is a bad area? What does that mean? What is your definition of a bad area?" I know some people think an area is bad if some kid threw a brick through a window. I've heard others say it's bad if that person got shot yesterday. What is bad? And when you start talking about that, it becomes a real problem. So when we're talking about realtor safety, one thing you have to be super careful of is that you're not being very stereotypical to somebody because you have personal issues yourself. And unfortunately, that does exist. I mean, this massive array that we have out there, obviously we still have issues out there. If you're going to have someone where you're talking to and you're being inconsistent with the way you handle them, you're asking for trouble, right? So just make sure when you're meeting someone out there, the best way to do it is to do it the same way every time. That way, if anybody ever went in front of a judge, they're like, you can ask the last 30 people I've dealt with. Every one of them told them, will tell you, they were asked to meet at the office. We met, we talked for a few minutes, and then we went show. Or we met them at the property. We asked for their ID, every single one of them. Still not a fan of that, but if it's consistent, that's a whole different story, okay? If you get that far and you decide to go in and show the house, there are some more takeaways as well. So when you go into a house with someone who's a stranger, it's a very good idea that you always keep yourself between them and the door. You don't ever want it the other way around. You don't ever want it where you're inside and they're blocking the door. You want them to go in first. You want to keep your distance to where you can make it to the door if you had to. A lot of people get alarmed. I guess I should have prefaced this conversation. A lot of people get alarmed when we talk about this. I want to make it very clear. It's very rare that these things happen. In fact, in Dallas-Fort Worth, I can recall 2 instances in the last 20 years that happened. Now, granted, 1 is enough, but there's a lot of interactions we have with a lot of people across the state and in Dallas-Fort Worth. And in Dallas-Fort Worth alone, to have 3.5 to 4 million people of a population, that happened twice in 20 years. And by the way, one of them had nothing to do with being a real estate agent, just had to do with they knew him. Okay, so you really talk about one random issue, and it was bad too. So you can't. And by the way, it was in what some people would consider to have been a prominent area. So you can't have the naivety to sit there and say, well, it won't happen to me. It can't happen to me. It can. It's extremely rare. But the reason why I qualified that, I don't want people to watch this show going, I'm concerned to be a realtor. You should never be concerned to be a realtor. Never. I do get people who come in and they're hesitant about being a real estate agent because of this phenomenon. That's not a reason not to be a real estate agent. There are plenty of tools you could do. But one of the ones we haven't talked about yet is bring someone with you. And you don't have to have a licensed agent go with you. It can be your spouse, it can be a friend, definitely could be another agent. You don't have to do it on your own. And that is a very good barrier. You want to talk about a barrier or someone pulling some type of stunt. When somebody else is there, it's that much more difficult for them to pull. I was about to say pull the trigger. Who does that? Who makes those conversations? What is wrong with me? That's not what I'm going to say. Go ahead, Banu, get in there.
Even if you don't take somebody with you, normally when I'm showing some stranger one of my listings, as soon as I get there, I just tell them, hey, I have to make a call and let my coworker or broker know that I'm here showing you the home. And I just sometimes I just tell them I have to text them or something, just give me 2 seconds and then I'll open and let you into the house. And so that way they know that somebody else knows that I'm there with them showing the home.
So that's why they're on the show, because that's not scripted, and that's one that I wasn't going to talk about, and I forgot about it. It's a really good one. Nothing wrong with saying, hey, look, let me make sure it's a policy and once again, it's policy. We do it all the time. So if you can do it once, you got to do it every time. As long as you do it every time, that's okay. Even if it's a fake call, even if, hey, I want to make sure I talk to my broker. Hang on for a second. It just lets that person know, they know I'm with you. I'm out. They know where I'm at. Another barrier for someone to possibly not pull a stunt.
Well,
does happen.
And that's a great point. And another thing, I mean, I always let my wife know when I'm doing an open house, and I let her know where I'm going to be. But it's also a good idea to let the neighbors know what you're doing. I mean, because sometimes, people, they don't always know what's going on. They see the sign in the yard, but you've got a lot of neighbors, around there that maybe they don't really know who's who or what's going on. So I'll let the most adjacent neighbors know, hey, I'm going to be here for a couple hours doing an open house, just so you know who's coming and going,
Yeah, I
think it's just like Banu said, right? Like letting somebody else know for your safety that XYZ is happening.
Yeah, I mean,
well, and Richa, you could maybe address this, because I know with the higher end home sometimes, like you can't even go see a house unless you've been pre-approved, right?
Yeah. So, I feel like that's depending after a certain price point for sure, but a lot of it depends on your client. I've had clients almost right at the $1 million mark as well, that are not comfortable with just strangers walking in their home. And so they require a pre-approval letter, or they require that I am there for the showing.
Okay.
Right. And I'm seeing more of that on MLS listings too.
Once again, it better be consistent. It better be every single person. You do it one time, and in a court of law, they can get you for it. One time where you're not consistent, because they'd be like, why'd you not do it for that person, but you did it for everybody else?
Everybody else.
So I guess that's a question of mine. If the client has not requested it, then do I still at least offer, or am I just required to do it? That if
Remind me which one you're talking about. We talked about a couple issues there.
I meant for like me being there for the showing. Like some clients ask me that, hey, will you feel more comfortable if you're there for the showing, like a agent to meet for a listing?
You're asking if the client asks you that, what you tell them?
Yeah. So if one client asks me, hey, I want you to be there for the showing, for all the showings that happen.
Yeah. So, okay. So
do I at least offer that to the next client that I have that's at that mark?
That's different. That's different when it's a client.
Yeah, it's a client's requesting.
Yeah, no. If you're doing it because you do it, you have to do it for everybody. If they request,
okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, we have to answer to do what they, whatever they do. Now, I will say the obvious that. Remember, we always tell every seller they typically don't like when we're there. Like, I'm just going to tell you, they don't like it. But I do understand. I will admit, in the luxury homes, you see that more often. You do see that, hey, you need to be there too, because those houses don't get shown very often. And
the pre-approval letter that David said is true, right? Like a lot of the sellers are like, you know what, we just don't want a bunch of looky-loos in the house, which is fair. Which it's their private personal property.
Yeah, as long as
it's open, it's open to the public, but if they're requiring that you.
As long as they don't do it for one and do it for the other. Now, in that same conversation, from a seller perspective, a seller can be hit for being discriminatory if they do that as well. They have to abide by federal laws as well there, so they can be included in that. So they too have to be careful how they present themselves when it comes to someone being present. Are they there all the time? But again, the key here, and I love it because it's a key to everything I do, is consistency. It's consistent. It's all the time. It's the same thing every week. Consistency will always keep you out of trouble, or consistency will get you in trouble because you're consistently bad at something. But one way or the other, you have to be consistent when you're going through there. Okay, let me see on, and the other thing you have to be careful on realtor safety, and I guess this isn't much safety as it is more client protection, and you guys were kind of hinting at it. A lot of people are surprised at the amount of drugs that are taken or stolen from somebody's residence. That is one of the number one complaints we get from a seller on a very private matter, that, hey, I'm missing something. Like, what are you missing? Well, it's some personal things, but I mean, they won't necessarily come out and say it. But then you have those like, hey, I had a lot of weed in that drawer and it's gone. I've heard that before too.
Well, that and that's a good point. And firearms too is another big one. And I tell my clients, look, if it's an occupied home. I had a client one time, and he was really he had a fetish about sunglasses, and I'm talking about nice sunglasses, not the cheapy. And I bet the guy had, I'm not kidding, 2 or 3 dozen, and they were out in the open. And I said, "Are you sure you don't want to put?" I said, "I would recommend you lock those up." Because they were, even the ones that were behind the glass were not locked up. And he said, "No, I'm okay. I'm not worried about it." I said,
we
"Well,
see this
okay."
a lot
But
with prescription drugs, where
yeah,
we have prescription drugs that are out there, and like very hardcore, very hard to get prescription drugs. Those are the number one item is stolen is prescription drugs. Things like oxycodone, hydrocodone. Those are the number one things that can be taken in a home. So from a safety standpoint, this is another reason why when we're meeting a stranger, we have to be careful. That also brings me to another point, a good takeaway from the show today. When you have 2 people that go into the house that are strangers, that's another one that you have to be very cautious of, especially if one goes this way and the other goes that way. We don't know these people. And that's very difficult for us to monitor when someone we don't know goes that way. And most of the time, when we have someone who's going to commit something of a criminal nature, that is what they'll do. They'll intentionally go separate so nobody can see what the other one is doing. So we have to be very cautious. Now, I'll admit that one's a lot more difficult to deal with, because the only way to deal with that is, hey guys, we need to stay together. Obviously we don't know y'all, so and it's policy that we stay together with everyone. But even that one's I don't even like saying that very often.
Usually I let like in my personal experience, there's very few times, like you're saying, most of the time agents are going to showing with somebody that they know either firsthand or have a referral from. But when you are going with a stranger, I tend to stay at the door and I let them see the house. And I usually do that with all my clients as well. I'm not an agent. I don't like to follow you from room to room to room. I usually, at least I give you your space. If you need my attention or you have a question, you're showing me something, and I will be there.
Some sellers have issues with us not babysitting, Mike. We can't do that. And the bottom line is this: the moment a seller agrees to put the lock on the door, they've given access to anybody going into that house with a real estate license. If they let us in, we cannot be responsible for what someone does in there. We can do the best we can at supervising, but we're not there for protection. Luckily for sellers these days and in this day and age, it's very fortunate that most of them have cameras everywhere.
But that can also be a bit of a prickly situation, Robert, because I had a seller who was very upset that these people were going through his drawers and closet, and because he had custom drawers in the closet and they were opening and looking at it, and he was like, "Can you put a note saying they can't go through my closet?" I said, "Well, I am not the one all the time showing the home. There could be other people seeing as well. So it's up to us to make sure you don't have anything valuable and personal in it. If you need to pack it up, put it in one closet, lock it up, and so we can put a note saying this closet cannot be opened. We can do that, but you just can't. I can't just say don't open, because they were opening like medicine cabinets and fridge, freezer, everything. But some people are just like that.
I'll tell you, the some people too, the worst of those are your friends. They're the ones who do stuff like that. I have to tell my friends, like, don't screw off in here. I have to answer for this type of stuff. So it's your friends that are worse with that when they go through, because they're screwing around. We've talked about this in a lot of shows recently, but we continue to reiterate, when you walk into a house, you better believe there's a good chance somebody's watching you or listening to you. And if you don't know that by now, you got bigger issues. So whatever you do, however you conduct yourself, it better be in a professional manner, because they are listening to what you do. So that is, and that's
not just inside the house. That's right outside the house as well. So people, we tend to, we show the house and then the client wants to discuss it outside the house, and you discuss it on the front patio.
Ring is very good.
Most people have a ring.
Ring's very perceptive of hearing. It's very clear when someone's talking. And, those of you too, we've talked about this in another show, but since Richard brought it up, I'm going to talk about it again. You should tell your clients when you walk in a house, do not make any obvious comments. Do not make the, "Oh, I love this house." Do not make the, "This is the one." Do not make the, "I'll pay whatever for it." They can hear you. And the moment you've done that, you've killed any negotiation skill. And those of you, like Richard said, she made a really good point. well, let's just walk outside. I've seen agents do this. I'm like, they can hear you out there too. Unless you're really off property, you really shouldn't be discussing what goes on there. So that's a great point as well.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, having those cameras and all that, although sometimes it's good safety for realtors as well. I mean, at least we know that, it's just not, I'm walking into an empty house. It's just somebody watching, which is good.
Actually, and that's a great comment to make. You probably could work that into the show's just as good as for me as it is for y'all. That actually, the more I'm thinking about that now, that's actually a good entry comment into a house. Go, hey, look, feel free to look around, do whatever you need to. Go, just want to make you aware. Don't make any comments about what you like about the house, because it could hurt negotiations. Remember, they're watching. There's cameras in it. That's actually a very subtle way of saying, I'm not telling you to be careful. I'm telling you they're watching us. So that's actually a really good comment from a barrier standpoint. You're not even addressing the safety issue. You're just flat out telling them, oh, they're listening and they're watching. And I even go, and some of them could be doing it live. That's a very good deterrent for a stranger. I might start telling the guys to use that. That's a real good deterrent on telling someone in a very professional way. Because if you've been told that and you still do something, you are an idiot. Like beyond, obviously anybody's thinking about it's an idiot anyways, but I'm talking about an idiot beyond an idiot to still do that. I'm like, you're just. That's
a double-edged sword too, right? Because if you're recording somebody in there and you hear things like that, and then you bring that up later on, there could be some liability on your side too as a seller.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody's watching, you should not be listening. That's a real gray area. There are some people say you have to notify people that you're doing that. That's real gray. I've never seen, where the notification is, where they do. I'm just telling you, I don't think I'd be the one that's listening in on somebody's conversations. One, from a courtesy standpoint thing, and two, there could be some legal ramifications if they caught you doing it or they caught on to something. Although I say that every time I say I'm going to go get some Crown, there's about 5 Crown things on my Facebook. I mean, I'm like, you people mind your own business. I mean, y'all don't have to worry about me buying the Crown. I'll get it, but it shows up there. So it's very awkward who's listing and who's.
And it's human nature. I've had to counsel clients because they'll go in. I've taken clients in houses and they'll start making comments about, oh, I hate that floor, or that's an ugly furniture. I'm like, keep those opinions to yourself, because whether they're listening or not, I mean, you don't know who's there. I've been in open houses and people make comments like that. You don't know who's standing around you.
So this is a good comment. Some people would argue that's a good negotiation ploy by saying that. I'd be like, I could go the other way too. You could piss them off.
Yes.
Or you talk that way about their house and like, I don't want to sell my house to that person. So it works both ways.
You bet.
I think just general be kind to others, like goes back to literally Sesame Street Elementary School.
I wish.
You don't want.
I feel like
just about if we could all go back to the sandbox. Yeah, that's a real true.
I feel like those are like good, right? When it came to safety responsibility with the COVID, when it came to safety responsibility with showing a house, came to your personal safety, pleases and thank yous. Just be aware of your surroundings. Be kind to others. I really think that, like you said, like Banu said, let somebody know that, hey, somebody else is watching. Simple measures. I feel like.
I will tell you, I stay away from all political comments, at least live.
150,000,000%.
Yeah, live or anything like that. But I will say,
at any time,
in retrospect of what's going on today, in my opinion, it's a respect issue that's a problem. It's not a bunch of other issues combined, one or the other. It's a respect issue. We've lost the respect for the average person out there. We've lost it. We don't know. We don't know how to interact. We let our opinions overseed. It's like we can't have different opinions. And because our opinion doesn't view with theirs, that they're bad. I mean, that's not the way this was designed to work. And the unfortunate thing is I don't think you can teach respect. It's too hard. And it is the thing that troubles me most, because you're right. If people were more kind to each other and more respectful, this wouldn't be as much of a problem with everything that we have out there. But now you have a world that's extremely entitled. extremely entitled, thinking I'm owed this, I'm owed that. You have a 17-year-old that's quoting, rights that they have, and they haven't even experienced yet what those rights are, nor do they even know what those rights are. There they are, just firing away. It's tough. It's a very tough thing when you start losing the respect for somebody else. And I think that's become one of the biggest problems out there. All right, I want to end the show on one more major safety topic issue because it's a big one, and it's driving. And thankfully, this is not as much of a problem anymore because most agents and most people these days drive separately, and COVID's certainly going to succumb to that as well. If you were still bringing clients in the car, now is probably your best time to say, hey, we just don't do that anymore. COVID has proven that we really shouldn't be. In the flu season, you should have never done that. It drove me crazy when clients wanted to drive with me in the flu season. I cannot count the amount of times, and this is way back when because we really don't do it anymore, but I cannot count the times where I had someone in the car and their kid sneezed or something, and they're like, yeah, he's sick all day. I'm like, God,
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
Why the hell is he in here? Actually, I haven't told this one in a long time too. Never will forget. Y'all, I got stories all left and right. I was up there on 380 before it grew to what it is today. This person begged to go see houses, and I went ahead and made it move some things so I could do it. We're in there. It's me and the kids in the back. We're driving through. Everything's fine. All I hear is vomit all over the back of my head and in the car. And then the guy tells me he's been sick this past week. I have never given somebody a more infuriated, stupid look than that individual. Do you know I had to sell that car because of that? There was so much vomit, I could never get it out, and it just sickened me to this day. So that's a good.
Please stop. Time out. We can't discuss this anymore.
Someone in the car there had to sell the car. I love that car too. So here's the thing on the driving. One, we have to be very careful from a liability standpoint. Even when you're driving yourself, there are issues in hand if you're in the scope of work. A broker's biggest nightmare is an individual agent who's out there showing property, even if they're on their own and they're impaired or something and they hurt somebody, or they just hurt someone, period, because of negligence. Probably the scariest thing that keeps brokers up at night is that that's a reality that can happen. So you have to be extremely careful. We always talk about this one's a problem too, and I'm just as guilty of it. There's nothing more embarrassing than showing property if they're in your car or even following you and you get pulled over for speeding in a school zone. And don't think I'm ripping through a school zone. It's very hard when you're showing property to forget where you're at. And, you end up going like 30 in a school zone. It happens, and it's very embarrassing. It's very embarrassing, and explain to the client that that's what happens. So from a safety perspective, those of you who drive like you normally do, which is pretty much like shit for everyone out there, when you're in the scope of work, you really have to concentrate. You have to abide by the laws. You have to abide by the speed limit. You have to stop when it says stop. This can get you in a lot of trouble with certain people, and it is in general a safety hazard when you're doing those things, especially being on the phone when you're driving with clients. That is the most stupid thing I see. I'm not saying when you're on your own. If you're on your own and out of work and you're doing it, it's still stupid personally. But as far as in the scope of work, when you let a client see you talking on the phone while you're driving, not a good idea, especially if you have an accident. That's another distracting tool out there. So from a safety perspective, no talking on the phone when you're in the car with a client, or even if they're following you. Abide by the laws. God forbid if you're doing anything beyond what you're supposed to be doing. That's just a recipe for disaster when it comes to safety. The end of the show is the most brutal, is a safety issue occurring because of driving. It is the number one factor that really is a problem for us. So that should be another takeaway as well, being careful. Richard, something before we go? Did you raise your hand?
I was just going to circle back real quick to the firearm thing that David talked about. I know in our state it's very common to have them, but I do let all my clients, like the listings, let them know, hey, if you have a firearm for your safety and the safety of others, please go ahead and lock them up.
Yeah.
Because I had gone to an open house. I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. They had a gun case, and I'm talking big rifles and stuff, just open. And I walked over there, and there was somebody else's child, not my client, somebody else's child had opened the cabinet.
Right.
Now they were just looking at it. I don't know what all they were doing. But again, it's little things like that, right? Like it could have turned disastrous fast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so just the simple things like that, just go back to the kindness, simple common sense thing.
I do want to address one more issue before you go, because it's an important one, and it is on the gun topic. So we have people listen across the country, so this is different per state, but in the state of Texas, it's an open carry. They can, you're allowed to carry a weapon. Well, actually, it can be concealed or open right now, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is that correct, David?
Yeah, that's correct.
So they can have a weapon, but here's the thing. It's very difficult when you run a large group or brokerage or firm to address these issues. Most of the firms have policies in place that no firearms are permitted or on the premises, or if they're with any type of client. But that's a very fine line to walk when it's legal. So it's very tough when somebody asks me, can I carry a firearm? Because if I tell them no, they're like, well, federal law or the state law allows me to. And now I'm going against state law, which that's not fun. But then I'm like, well, the company has the right. We have a lot of agents out there that carry and don't tell anybody. And they don't tell anybody because they know if they tell somebody that they could either be reprimanded for it or told to stop. It's going to happen. They are out there. And my comment to you is, those of you that are going to do it, you better damn well make sure that you've taken every safety precaution you can on that weapon, because those stories about a weapon going off and hitting a client, which do and have happened, are beyond the ones that you want to be a part of. Now, any gun owner on here is like, yeah, we know that. We have to go through all of our. I'm like, I know. And those same people are the ones that still have done that. So I'm just telling you, if you're going to do it where you're told not to do it, I'm not giving you an opinion one way or the other, whether you can have it or not. What I know for a fact, those that want to do it are going to do it anyways. You better be careful. It's not just you that's involved. Some people argue, I'm protecting my client. I'm like, yeah, we can go different ways on that, whether you're protecting them or putting them in danger. But nonetheless, it's a safety issue, and it's a big one. So just be very careful with that.
Well, it's even though it's law, a business has the right to not allow you to carry it in their business. So
and the sad thing is they can't monitor it. I love it when it's out there. I'm like, how are they going to know?
How are you going to know? Right. If you're concealed carrying, you won't know.
Yeah, you'll never be able to know. So it's interesting how they put that in there. Yeah. All right, I want to thank everybody out there for watching today. Hopefully there were some takeaways that you didn't know about. Again, there's probably another 3 or 4 hours that we could have gone on this. So I want to thank everyone, especially thank my agents for taking the time. They go through the middle of the day. They have to take time to come out and do this, and it's most appreciated. Their insight is just as helpful for everybody out there. So hopefully you guys appreciate them as well. Thanks to everybody. We'll see you guys next week. We're very consistent about doing the show. Thanks for watching. Pass the show on to others. KBGI Facebook page, KBGI Media, great forum to run these podcasts through, and very informative for any type of industry that you're in. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye.